My name is Jeff Weiser. I'm a retired police officer from the Metro Nashville Police Department. I spent 33 years in law enforcement, 8 years in Dallas, and 25 and a half in Nashville. And the majority of my time was spent as a detective. Worked several years in homicide, several years in domestic violence. In the last 8 years of my career, I was in sex crimes. I got involved in the case known as the Wooded Rapist and got involved several years ago, about a year before he was captured. I actually was assigned the very last victim that he had in Nashville, who was a 61-year-old woman that he had raped, had broken into her house around 11 o'clock at night and had raped her. And she was a pretty amazing lady that after he got done, he put her in the shower, told her to rinse off, and in fact she turned the water on but stood against the shower to try to preserve any evidence, and in fact even took a Q-tip and swabbed her own mouth and put the Q-tip in a bag. The Wooded Rapist was a case that had been going on for about 14 to 15 years in Nashville. In Williamson County, he had raped probably up to that point about 15 women. We had his DNA, but we had no name attached to the DNA. Been working that case. Several detectives had come and gone working the case. We had a profile of him, but we really didn't have a good sketch of him, and we were pretty proactive. It was mainly in the areas off Otter Creek area, Time Boulevard, places in Brentwood where he attacked women, and we would several times during the week, we would actually get unmarked cars and drive those areas from about 11 p.m. to 3 in the morning in an effort to try to locate vehicles, stop cars, anything to try to catch him. But he always evaded us. Even though we had his DNA, we could never connect anything to that person. The way we caught him, we had a very alert Brentwood officer who got a call one night. There was a couple from Michigan that had parked their RV in a family's parking lot in Brentwood, and their dog started barking, and this lady stepped outside and was actually confronted by this guy in all black. Fortunately, she had the wherewithal to call 911, and it was a rainy night, which typically he struck late at night when it was raining in wooded areas, which this was. An officer, a Brentwood officer, had driven by, saw a vehicle parked kind of strangely, like it shouldn't have been there. He set up on the car. When the car left, he actually made a traffic stop, approached the person, who was Robert Burdick, got his information. There was a bag in the back seat of the car, and he asked if he could search it, and he said no, did not give consent. And at that point, he had no probable cause to search the car. As soon as the person left, there was no reason to arrest him at that point. Alerted us, alerted the Brentwood detectives, and we started a 24/7 surveillance of him, put a bird dog on his car because he just fit the MO perfectly. He ended up going into a restaurant in Brentwood, and after he got done eating, he got up, went over, and we took a glass that he'd been drinking out of, and submitted that to the TBI. We set up on him for about 2 days while they rushed through the DNA of his glass. Once we got confirmation, he was actually on the interstate heading toward Alabama. When we got that confirmation, since we had a John Doe warrant for his arrest, we were able to alert the officers following him, and they took him in custody. This case was a really difficult case. When I did a search warrant of his residence, and when we went through his bedroom, he had a closet full of, I used to call rape paraphernalia. He had dark clothes, ski mask, he had anti-dog barking devices, night vision goggles, he had gun cases where he had guns in there that was also full of condoms, just full of stuff that it was clear what he was up to. But it always struck me that the victims, how strong they were. They all came back to court and testified, and it really gave them a sense of empowerment and closure to be able to look at him in the courtroom and explain to the judge exactly what he did. I'll never forget that. It just struck me how they were so empowered, and the courage that they had to get up there and look at him. And it truly did give them some closure. And now he's basically will die in prison for the crimes that he's committed.